What is up, guys? We are back for another video working on the Dakota, and today we've got something a little bit different. This is something I've kind of wanted to try on a vehicle for different reasons depending on the vehicle I wanted to do it on, and I'm finally going to have the opportunity to give it a try and see how it goes. And that is, we are going to be making what is known as a bastard pack. So a bastard pack is basically when you take the main spring off of another vehicle's spring pack, whether you go to the junkyard and take it out or whatever you do, or you can go online and order bastard pack kits, which comes with an add-a-leaf spring and all the stuff to install it. And essentially what you're doing is adding an extra spring to your leaf spring pack. So in my case, I went to the junkyard and got these. So these are the main springs, just with the ears cut off of like a 2000 or 2002 Dodge Dakota. So they're off of a newer one than this, but it'll pretty much work the same. The leaf springs on those are pretty much identical to the leaf springs on the older trucks. So basically what we're going to be doing is taking these springs. I've already cut the ears off because I had to go to the junkyard and cut them off to be able to even get them off of the truck, but I do have to cut them down more. You can see I've got some marks here. I'm going to go and cut these just a little bit shorter so that they'll actually fit, because these have to be able to fit underneath of the main springs on this truck without, when they're compressed, without touching the ears of those springs. So I got to cut them down just a little bit more on the ends, and then I'll make the two springs even that way as well. I'm going to leave the main springs in the truck, and I'm going to remove all the rest. Pop these in, put the other springs back in with some new hardware, and that'll be basically it. So the main reason I'm doing this is because on really long sweeping dips and bumps in the road where the suspension really gets compressed, I am hitting my frame with my axle because of how low the truck sits. And these back springs I know are super spongy because of their age. I mean, I can come back here and this thing bounces quite a bit, and that's without even really pushing on the thing. So, and it doesn't match how stiff the front end is anymore either. So these will even up the stiffness front and back. It'll fix the curliness on the springs, get them straightened out. It'll stiffen up the back so that it won't, hopefully won't, hit the frame anymore at this ride height. It might help performance. It might reduce axle wrap a little bit as well. The axle won't be able to pull the leaf springs and twist them around as much. So overall, it's going to be pretty beneficial. It is going to reduce ride quality for sure. It's going to be a lot stiffer and probably a little bit bouncy in the back. And doing these two springs here together cost me 20 bucks. The hardware cost me $5, and that's all I'm going to be into doing this. So I'm going to see how this works, and if I'm happy with it, I will just leave it like that for good. That is plenty of rambling. We're going to go and get this truck jacked up, start pulling these leaf springs apart, and start fitting these things in. Alright, I went and I got the driver's side springs all taken apart. Surprisingly, the nut on the bolt that runs through actually came out. Yeah, the bolt actually came out, and the 10mm Allen head bolts that I got, and I just picked these things up from Ace Hardware. Took the heads down, ground them down just a little bit so they'll slide inside of these blocks nice and tight. But it is a 10mm bolt on the factory springs, and I won't have to drill anything out. I do need to make sure that this non-threaded part isn't too long. I don't think it will be. I need to go measure that. But all I need to do is take the other side apart and cut the ends of these main springs, test fit them, make sure that they fit good, and then just stick them on the truck, bolt everything back together. I'm going to put the 2-inch blocks in for now, because I'm assuming, there's a bunch of junk in there. I'm assuming that the truck is going to be raised up at least an inch. I did measure the distance from like the bottom of like the back of the bed to the ground from this corner here, and it was 8.5 inches. So after I set this thing back down on the ground, I'll measure it and see where I'm at. As long as it's between 8 and 9 inches from the ground, I'm going to leave it there. If it's anything lower than that, I'm going to have to put smaller blocks in it. If it's higher than that, I'll go ahead and go back to the 3-inch blocks, but I'm hoping I don't have to put those in there because these are massive. So I don't want to have to put those in there if I don't need to, but if I do, at least I'll have stiffer springs to support all of that. But yeah, I'm going to go get the other side taken apart, get these popped back together. This has gone a lot easier than I expected. And sit it on the ground, get it all put back together, sit it on the ground and test the height out. And we'll see how much stiffer it is, and then kind of see what the shape of the springs looks like after all that's done too. Alright, I got everything put back together and things went very well. One thing I will mention is that the lower plate, this thing down here, I had to drill out for the nut to fit through it. I got it drilled out to where the nut fit into it nice and snug. But the Allen head bolts, with just a little bit ground off, fit inside the 2-inch blocks that I've got on there now. So you can see just how straight the main spring actually is and how worn out it is. Once everything is compressed, that gap is going to go away. I cut these things as long as possible, and you can see there's just a very small gap at the end there, and same deal at the end there. And as these compress together, that gap is going to shorten up, so I'm going to have to watch that. If I have to, I can cut them down a little bit more, because I don't want those ends to be smacking the end of the main spring that's on there. I don't think we're gonna have that issue, but we'll find out here in just a second. So I'm gonna get the other wheel on and jack this thing up, get the stands out of it and set it down, and we're gonna take a measurement of where the height is, because it's gonna be higher, but I also put the bigger blocks in it, so that's gonna lower it. So we'll kind of see what sort of effect this had on the height, and then we'll just see how much stiffer it looks. I'm not gonna be able to take it out for a drive until later today, because there's 3 or 4 cars parked in the driveway blocking it in right now, but we will get around to taking it for a drive and see how much stiffer it is. I have a feeling it's probably going to feel like my F-250 does, because that thing's a 3/4 ton truck and it's got the dual mainsprings from the factory. They're a little bit heavier springs. This thing won't be quite there, but with how light this truck is, it's probably going to feel about the same as far as stiffness goes in the back. So, alright, I got the truck set back down on the ground, and I'm pretty content with how this thing went. So my prediction was right. This thing did get lifted pretty significantly, although I think it might settle after I drive it around for a little bit. Everything works good, everything compressed. The springs they're about that far away from the ends of the main leaves on each side, so we're good there. Height wise, this truck total, the springs were lifted 2 inches. The truck, when I measured it before, was at about 8.5 inches high, and now it's at 9.5 inches with the 1-inch larger block. So the leaf spring bastard pack lifted it exactly 2 inches, which is good. I'm pretty sure that after I drive this thing around for a little bit, that it is going to compress everything together a little bit more, because there's still a slight gap between the main leaf and the leaf spring that I added to it. I think for right now, the slight rake it has is pretty much the factory amount of rake it had, so it's meant to have this. And I think it looks fine. It's not like it was before, where the back end was literally about 4 inches higher than the front when I originally lowered the front end. After everybody's left, I'm going to go out and take this thing for a drive and see how bouncy it potentially is, or how rough it is. And then I'll end the video there, because I do want to be able to give you guys some insight on how it rides with the stiffer springs. And the other reason I'm going to leave it sitting higher is because I got an extra inch of clearance between the frame and the axle now too. So, and I noticed one of my brake lines has been whacked once. It doesn't look too bad yet, but I'm going to have to change it and reroute it so that if the axle does hit the frame anymore, at least it won't pinch a brake line. So yeah, I'll be back with you guys later on. We'll go take this thing for a drive and just see how it feels driving around town. Alright, I am back. It is actually the next day. I didn't have time to film the ender yesterday, but I did end up going in and putting the 3-inch blocks in it instead of the 2-inch blocks, and the height is pretty much perfect. And I've gone and tested it out by opening the tailgate and just jumping on the tailgate to see if I could get the axle to smack the frame, and it wasn't doing it that way. So I think I've got it all pretty much taken care of. So that's what the height situation looks like. We're sitting, it's got about an inch rake, 3/4 inch rake, something like that, between the front and the back, which is right where I want it to be. I want the back end to be between 1/2 inch to 1 inch higher than the front, just for tire clearance purposes and all that sort of thing. And it is worth mentioning that the front tires here are about 1/2 inch taller overall than the back tires. And when I go through here and do new tires all the way around, I'm going to be putting a slightly taller tire, very much wider, but just slightly taller tire in the back, and the tire in the front is going to be about an inch shorter. So I'll get more tire clearance in the front. Wheel gaps will be much more even, and it'll be a lot better that way. Yeah, it does ride a lot stiffer. It's a little bit bouncy, not too bad. It's about as bouncy as like a 3/4 ton pickup truck like my F-250 would be. Maybe a little bit less actually, because this thing's got shorter sidewall tires on it, but it's pretty much like that ride wise. It doesn't, bumps don't hurt as bad though, I noticed, which I don't know what the deal is with that. I figured because these are going to be pretty stiff. Bumps don't really hurt, but you do feel them a lot, and there's a tiny bit of bounce. I'm going to try putting new shocks on the back of here, because right now I'm running some used shocks that I pulled off of the Monte Carlo that I had. The back end is stiffened up a lot. My body roll has been reduced significantly now. Like now, if I did this before, the whole body would just be flopping around, and we aren't doing that anymore. The whole axle and tire is moving, so that cured my body roll. So I guess the reason I had so much is because of how soft the back springs were, and it was just compressing the one side when I would go around corners. So that is taken care of. I'm still going to put a sway bar on the back at some point, but it's a significant improvement. I do think that these are going to settle and kind of soften up a little bit once everything is just kind of relaxed into its new shape and its new positioning. But for right now, it's working great, and once it's kind of settled in, I think it's going to be even better. That is going to be the end of the video. That is how to put a bastard pack on a Dodge Dakota, and that is, you'll get 2 inches of lift doing that. So if you want to stiffen up your back end, you're on a budget, this is the best budget option to stiffen up the back end. Way better than helper springs or anything like that. Those things cost quite a bit of money, and they don't offer as much as this does. So as far as budget options go, your only 2 options are air shocks, which are actually pretty expensive, helper springs, still more expensive than this, or a new leaf spring pack, which is obviously very expensive. So I'm going to end the video here. Hope you guys have enjoyed. Hope some of you have found this helpful if you've got some old sagging springs on your pickup truck, and I will see you all later.